So if enlightenment happens, how do we know it has happened? Suppose we are hallucinating to be enlightened. If such a thing happens, it will be clearer than daylight. It's not something that you can miss. It is not that kind of an event that you could miss it. You will not miss it. But when I say this, there is a problem attached to this because these days it is going on in many places. For a certain fee, within a weekend's time you can get enlightened. You'll be declared enlightened by somebody. Really. It's happening everywhere. If you just pay a certain amount of money, one weekend you can get enlightened. I remember in the 60s, in the 1960s, in California, people set up certain businesses, enlightenment services. The advertisement I remember very well. If you go to India, it will take 12 years of hardship. Okay. $50, 30 minutes, you can get enlightened.
As you just saw in that video, enlightenment these days is extremely easy to come across. Whether you go to, let's say you go to Reiki, what they do is they do some hand signals, then they'll blow on you. Basically that's a form of getting Satan passed on to you. It's just like, you know, people can touch you. Like if you watch some of these Kundalini awakenings, they touch you, all of a sudden you're like shaking and spazzing out and going crazy. These are spirits that are then getting into you and they're opening something additional inside of you. Now, I'm going to be covering a couple of things because this is why it is so important to learn that Satan is a master deceiver. He copies the real Christ, the real Jesus. There's nothing new under the sun, as the scripture says. He just is copycat. So, Satan absolutely has himself his own awakening process. As if you go on, let's say, to YouTube, and you say, type in spiritual awakening, you're going to see all these weird visions and sounds, and these are other forms of ways that it can get in and open you up. Basically, you open up a door for spirits to come into you. Now, there's a couple things I want to go over here. And first, I'm going to talk a little bit about David Spangler. He's a New Age author. He's the head of the United Nations Planetary Initiative. He writes in his book, Reflections of the Christ, Christ being false Christ, Lucifer, like Christ, stands at the door of man's consciousness and knocks. If a man says, "Go away because I do not like what you represent, I am afraid of you," Lucifer will play tricks on that fellow. If a man says, "Come in and I will give to you the treat of my love and understanding, and I will uplift you in the light and presence of the Christ, my outflow," then Lucifer comes something else again. He becomes the being who carries that great trait, the ultimate trait, the light of wisdom. The reason man has come to fear Lucifer is not so much that he represents evil as because he represents the experience which causes us to grow and to move beyond the levels where we have been. Lucifer is literally the angel of experience. Moving beyond the levels basically we have been are what God set for us. When you open it up more, these experiences, whether it's psychic abilities that some people have after this, or whether it's the energy that comes in like a Reiki ability, and other things that can happen as well. This is basically Satan's gift saying, hey, you're more advanced, you're a higher being. You're evolved. And that is a spiritual awakening process for him. He also writes, the light that reveals to us the path to the New Age Christ comes from Lucifer. He is the light giver. It is his light that heralds for man the dawn of a greater consciousness. The true light of this great being can only be recognized when one's own eyes see that the light of the inner sun. It is an invitation into the New Age. He also basically talks about how no man, no person's going to be able to come into the New Age unless he takes a Luciferic initiation. Basically accepting this, I'm guessing, the mark of the beast somehow, maybe by accepting this light, living in this age of spiritualism where the one world religion, when you get into this spiritualism, and it's kind of unity that you feel. It's basically you can sense everyone else around you. You can sense other people's energies. You can sense how we're all connected. These are what the demons that opening up these gateways, inviting him in, for instance. This is the kind of rubbish that's going to be going through your mind. Obviously, in my Spiritual Awake Truth videos, I expose some of this in what exactly happened to me, what exactly happened with my light experience, for instance. The video I'm about to show you is also what happened from someone who was Satanist, witch, all this kind of garbage, and the experience he had with the light, how he came out of it.
What can you say about the light, since so many people think if there's a demon or a bad thing that they'll just send it to the light and that solves all problems?
Well, we were taught that as spiritualist mediums, because both my wife and I were ordained as spiritualist ministers and mediums. Oh, if you see a spirit coming, you just say, oh, do you stand in the light? Or like you say, if it's a bad, oh, I just send it to the light. Well, people forget that light is it's neutral. I mean, and Lucifer himself, the name means light bearer. He's called an angel of light in Paul's epistle to the Corinthians. So light in and of itself, there can be a false light. And that's the problem. I know when I went through the Luciferian initiation, maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but it was like this searing, blinding light came into my brain, just like someone pouring molten lava into my mind. And it blinded me. I mean, even though I had my eyes closed, the light was so bright, it was like the incandescent light of 1,000 suns. And that was my illumination. That was my enlightenment with the light of Lucifer.
All right there you saw a testimony from Bill Sniblin of his Luciferic initiation, the bright light that he experienced, which is an experience that is also like the enlightenment or the spiritual awakening. I can't speak for everybody on how it happened to them. I can only speak to basically how it happened to me. Moving on, I want to talk about what Manly P. Hall, he's a 33-degree Mason. The Masons obviously do follow Lucifer. When they get up in their certain degrees and get up to the top, they realize, oh hey, yeah, basically you're following Lucifer, you're following the devil, all that kind of jazz. So anyway, in the Lost Keys of Masonry, he writes, when the Mason learns that the key to the warrior on the block is the proper application of the dynamo of living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward, he must prove his ability to properly apply this energy. Now, what that all entails, I'm not sure. I can only speak about basically what happened in my experience, and that is what I'm going to show you. Now, what you see here in these photos that I took of myself when I was into the healing is
I did obviously healing on myself, and what came out of that was all these red blotches that I got all over my body. They lasted for probably about a week, week and a half or so. But this is what I forced out of my brain. Whether I've seen you have crystals in your brain, whether it was some kind of active MS, um, or as I've recently come to see, DNA can get altered. If that happened, God have mercy on me. Um, but this, as you can see, is not from God.
Now I want to talk to you about the false teachers that are out there and how they're talking about things like the contemplative prayer or the mysticism in the church. I know when I've listened to the Catholic channel here, they'll talk about Catholic mysticism. They'll promote it because there's, you know, mystics in their heritage. The meditation, yoga, those spiritual awakening videos, the sounds that are out there, these things, they all will awaken this other consciousness, and these are things that must be stopped. And you have certain preachers in the emergent church movement that are promoting these things. A great video, if you would start it probably about an hour into it, it's a 2-hour video, start about an hour into it, they'll talk about some of the false ways that they're getting contemplative prayer and such into the church. And that's on the Real Roots of the Emergent Church, if you just look that up here on YouTube. Now, these pastors are delusional because, first of all, this experience, I'm guessing they got into mysticism as well, and that's why they're delusional as well, because they're promoting something. Because when I was under this demonic power before they were cast out, I was promoting this. It was the whole like light worker agenda of the New Age movement. I'm this person sent here to help guide people into making a better earth. It's a delusion that gets into you, and these things are powerful. Now, these people need some massive reteaching, and you cannot follow people like the Rob Bell and whatnot that are in this video, so I strongly urge you to watch at it. I think they talk about the false teachers and their ways that they've accepted for about, I think it's like 22 minutes of it. So go ahead, please watch that. I didn't put it on here just because it's so additionally long, but watch the whole thing if you haven't seen it yet. Otherwise, that is Satan's way of getting born again, because this mystical power and sense and this feeling of oneness gets in you, and it is a strong delusion. So wake people up, spread the word that these things like meditation and whatnot, which I'm completely against, must not be done.